Okay, and so thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday. I'd like to introduce Tricia Mosher. Tricia has worked in the field of social work focused on child welfare, juvenile justice, public service, and leadership for over 30 years. Tricia began her consulting business, Tricia Mosher Consulting, 14 years ago, and in that time has worked nationally with a focus on organizational and professional development. Her practice experience and focus is on child, family, and community engagement and empowerment-oriented innovation. With a leadership and practice focus on strength-based interventions, Tricia used diverse tools and evidence-based and informed practices to assist individuals and teams achieve optimum performance. Each consulting engagement is customized to the unique strengths and challenges of the organizational context. Tricia has served child welfare, mental and behavioral health, elder support, housing and homeless services, and juvenile justice programs with a mind to building collaborative and community solutions to support thriving youth and families. Her private practice originated to serve youth in juvenile justice facilities who were duly involved with mental health and child welfare services. She also served as an instructor and contributing author to the federally sponsored Leadership Academy for Middle Managers within the National Child Welfare Workforce Institute for several years. Tricia has been a leader in work on teaming and collaboration across the nation, willing and eager to work both at the field level to coach to direct practice and working as a coach and mentor to leaders in child welfare and public service across the nation. While Ms. Mosher often works at the system level, her passion for direct work with children, youth, and families leads her to partner at macro, meso, family, and individual levels. Tricia attained her bachelor's degree at Wesleyan University in Connecticut and completed her master in social work at Boston University with a focus on family studies and group work. She is licensed at the clinical level in both Florida and Maine. I would also like to introduce Sonia Lynch-Dillard, is currently the CEO for Hope Connection Unlimited, LLC, and serves as an independent coach and consultant. She has a deep passion and commitment to helping others by walking alongside families, communities, and professionals as they grow in their awareness of self and strengthen both their internal and external knowledge, skills, and abilities. Ms. Lynch-Dillard is a graduate of the University of Florida with a BS in psychology and the University of South Florida with an MA in sociology. She is also a Florida Supreme Court certified family mediator and dependency mediator. Sonia has worked as an adoption specialist, licensing, relicensing specialist, foster care supervisor, senior quality management specialist, child welfare training director for Circuit 5, child welfare knowledge manager at University of South Florida, and family team conference facilitator. She has also worked as an adjunct professor at Pasco Hernando State College in Brooksville, Florida, and an independent consultant to the states of New Jersey, West Virginia, and Los Angeles County, California. She has 27 years experience of child welfare, 15 years as a family team conference facilitator, and over 8 years as a mediator. She has provided facilitation, coaching, various trainings, which include model approach to partnerships and parenting, foster parent mentoring training, essential parenting skills for positive behavior change for parents and caregivers. Ms. Dillard has also trained child protection staff on topics including decision-making for child safety, supervisor effectiveness training in Florida, cultural diversity, home visiting, and facilitating family team meetings. She has received specialty training in motivational interviewing, family team conferencing, domestic violence counseling, solution-focused skills development, and protective factors. So it's my pleasure to welcome Tricia and Sonia here today. Thank you so much, ladies.
Hi.
Thank you, Tracy.
Mhm.
So, gosh, that always sounds longer than I think that we wrote. So let me also just say that we like to think we're funny and entertaining and interactive. So we welcome you guys to interact with us through chat. Raise your hand, let us know. Our conversation today is really going to be about supporting safety and healing by using a partnership approach. But please rest assured that although we do have a lot of professional experience, we really designed today's conversation with you to think about how every one of us in the community and in interactions with kids and families can be part of creating safety and healing for families that struggle. So again, please jump in if you have questions or thoughts or feelings. The other thing I do want to mention, and I think this is important to acknowledge, is that this is a tough topic. and that very few people in the world are untouched by some of the things that we're going to be discussing. So there won't be anything graphic that we present that might visually or, in your hearing, be particularly like, we're not going to be showing any reality scenarios of some of the things we're talking about. However, we are going to talk about adversity. We're going to talk about trauma. And later in our work together, we will be showing a video of a young man who grew up in foster care, who will be describing some of his experiences. Again, not the most graphic video that you could watch, but he will be talking about some tough stuff. So we encourage and invite you, as we do for ourselves, to take care of yourself first. And if you notice that there's anything that we're heading into or portraying that's a little tough for you to be present for, you can certainly, cover up your screen, turn down the sound for a little bit, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. Because we certainly don't want to create any situation where you're feeling distressed and it blocks your ability to enjoy or appreciate the time together that we have. So with that, and we're going to stretch the limits of the technology that we know about today. And I have complete faith that amongst us all, we'll manage our way through it. But we would like to throw out a poll. It's anonymous. It's just asking you about all the different ways that you have interacted or been present in the world. And you can choose more than one answer. So if we could get the poll up there just to have a sense of what all of our experience is, you'll see a lot of different things listed. And please, if you've been 5 or 6 of these people or in these roles, please check them all. We really want to know what we have in common and where you have some expertise that we could draw upon. I don't know how easy it is to do if you're on your phone and stuff, but we'll try to get to maybe about 60 or 70% at least. Oh, all right, up to 60.
Yeah,
I did mine's on my phone. It worked just fine.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yes.
Good. Thank you for telling me.
Yeah, I did it, submitted it, and it went through.
Beautiful.
we're at 74% now.
Awesome. So look at this. We have every different path here of people that at least I could think of, and there are probably some things that I couldn't think of where we've had these experiences. So my hope is that although we're showing you some things on the screen, we're talking about some expertise or topics that we have spent a lot of time with, you too are going to know these things. So again, as interactively as we can go forward, that would be awesome.
Did you want me to share? We're at 80%. Did you want me to share?
Yeah, why don't we share it at 80%?
Okay.
Okay. So interesting. Okay.
Okay.
So I think that's good. That gives us a sense that we have everything I could think of represented. So if we can go to the next slide. I think these answers on the poll really qualify us to think about this one together. And we thought maybe just to warm everyone up, we would put you in some small groups. Let's keep this conversation at a level that's comfortable for you guys, but we really want you to think about what is it in your own life that makes you feel safe and supported in general. You may not have had any adverse experiences or what we're going to come to call ACEs. You might not have had moments where you necessarily felt that you were unsafe, but just generally what makes you feel that way. I'm going to give Tracy a minute to create and invite you to breakout rooms.
Actually, Christine's handling it because I'm.
Oh, Christine, sorry.
Don't worry.
Yeah, but so we have to close the previous breakout room so that we can create new breakout rooms.
Got it. That's what I wondered about. Yeah, we have a breakout room.
But someone in the chat already put a comment, so maybe you can.
Oh, awesome. So do we want to just go with the chat and so that we don't have to mess with the breakout rooms? Christine?
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
That would probably be easier.
All right. So Carlos got us off to a good start here. A nurturing environment. And I don't know, Carlos, if you're comfortable, you can speak or chat to this, but are there things that are particularly nurturing in your view or in your experience? What are some things that make the world nurturing? Anybody can jump in.
Say for myself, it would be, parents or just family members who are, ask you questions, teach you things, guide you, show they love you, not just by things they give you, but just by just taking to certain experiences. I think it's just, sharing with one another that creates like an environment.
I love that you started with asking you questions, taking a real interest in who you are, right? Other things that people have experienced that make you feel safe and supported as a kid, as an adult, just in general in your day-to-day life.
Maria has raised her hand. So Maria, did you
Oh,
want
great.
to take yourself off mute?
I think that with me, thank you for having us. I think with me, it's learning experiences. As you grow, as a child, your parents did things a certain way, and then you tend to do things a certain way because of the way you're taught. But then as you grow and you get into a certain field like I did, you learn how to do things the right way and be supportive. Like I have 9 grandchildren, so you learn how to be supportive to your grandchildren, and you learn how to teach and protect. And you hear so many things that I mean, I don't let them walk like to school alone. Just stuff like that, because you never know. And I think just being aware of the things you do and you teach people around you is very important to me.
Yeah.
And it keeps me like calm, and knowing that we can make it a better place if we teach the right things and show our children the right things on what to look for.
Yeah. And it is kind of a two-way street. I think I heard you speak on this, but I think those walks to school are supportive for both parties, right? And that ability to be paying attention, and for kids in particular to see that, hey, the adults are paying attention to what's going on around me. Sorry for my dog. She really loves to be in the picture. Other people's ideas about what makes us feel safe and supported. You can type stuff in if you're not into public speaking. That's totally okay. So we're going to keep these and any thoughts that you had during that conversation in mind as we go through. It's really important when we talk about ACEs and trauma to understand that although we're going to be talking about some of the impact of those experiences, number one is for most people, it is not the only experience they had. Even in a difficult family situation, even if it was not a physically safe or emotionally or even sexually safe environment to grow up in, most kids and people have other experiences as well that become ways that they can heal. And the other thing to note is that healing is always possible. And so we may talk about things and you may find, boy, that's kind of depressing. And then our focus today really is in how do all of us, in whatever capacity we meet a family, contribute to the person and family's ability to heal and become safer or a safe place for kids to grow up. So if we could hit the next slide, that would be great. All right. So
hello.
Yeah, please.
Sorry, I was a little busy, but I wanted to share what the other lady was saying about picking up the kids from school and basically taking them to school. To me, and like my experience, I do the same thing. Like I take my kids like to school most of the time, and if not, they go on the bus. But I have to make sure that they're like going safely to school and coming back.
Yeah.
Because I did have an experience, like I was like in elementary, and once we used to walk home, and there was a car that pulled up and asking us like basically like directions.
Yeah.
And he was showing his part.
Oh my.
and it was me and my brother. So we got like, we were in middle school. So we were like all scared, and we ran home, and we even jumped a fence because we thought he was following us. And my brother got cut in his finger, and it was like a big, like maybe like trauma somehow.
Yeah.
And even it happened like after, like when I was 19 again, I used to like go to work, and I used to walk to one bus stop to go to work. And it happened again. A guy wanted to give me a ride, and I said no, and he would like keep following me. And I said no until he saw that I got like a pen and started writing his plate cards, his number on his plate card. Then he drove off.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think it is like very important to take the kids like to school and make sure they get to school safe and get out of school safe.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share that.
No, that's really good, Alma, because I think it's part of our conversation today is when we ourselves have these experiences that may be traumatic and adverse. One thing that can be an after effect is we're very sensitive and aware of how could that impact other people that we care about, and we take action about it. And it may take some time to get to that place, but that's really important. That's a great example to start us off with. So, and I want to talk a little bit about two levels. One is adverse childhood experiences, and then Sonia and I will talk a little bit about trauma. And so we'll come right back around to some of these conversations that you guys have raised. So adverse childhood experiences is a phrase, you can just put your hands up, but how many of you have heard that phrase before? Some of you might even have a doctorate degree in studying it, so you can jump in with your expertise. But we might have heard that phrase or heard the word ACEs. And in California in particular, there's probably been the most public education of any state I can think of about this idea of ACEs. So adverse childhood experiences are things that happen to kids that are adverse, that are not great. And they can both be a contributing factor in abuse and neglect of children, but they also can be an actual, they're captured in the ACEs list, which you're going to learn about. So the ACEs study actually happened decades ago. We're gonna in a second watch a quick video about it. And it outlined not only what kind of things can happen to kids that affect their growth and development, but some of the impact on health and well-being when people become adults. This is not by any means to say that this predicts that someone will become abusive or violent to their own kids or have any of the health concerns that we're going to talk about. And as you'll hear in the video, there are some things that we can do between that adverse experience and during our growing up and adulthood that can make it less likely that we'll have a bad outcome. But there was a strong connection between what happens for kids and what may happen for them later in their life. So if we could give it a shot to show this video, it's called the ACEs Primer. And I think you'll probably have to use the link to show it because I tried to make it part of the slide, but I didn't have a lot of luck.
What does your parents' divorce have to do with your risk for heart disease? If your mother had a drinking problem when you were growing up, are you more likely to suffer from depression as an adult? Here's what you should know about ACEs. ACEs stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences, extremely stressful events that can happen to a child growing up. Some experiences are so stressful that they can alter brain development, as well as the immune system, increasing the risk of lifelong health and social problems in adulthood. The term comes from the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, landmark research that shed new light on the root cause of everything from stroke and liver disease to substance abuse and mental illness. In the late 1990s, an epidemiologist from the Centers for Disease Control and a preventive medicine doctor at Kaiser Permanente set out to understand the association between childhood experience and lifelong health. They asked over 17,000 people in the Kaiser Health Plan in San Diego about their health history, as well as difficult questions about their experiences growing up. Anda and Felitti tallied up 10 different kinds of adversity in this largely middle-class and college-educated population. They were stunned to see how common ACEs were. 21% of all respondents were sexually abused as children. 19% grew up with someone who suffered mental illness. 28% had been physically abused. And 2 out of 3 respondents had experienced at least one ACE. The researchers next looked at how someone's ACE score, or the number of adversities they experienced, related to a wide array of serious health and social problems. They saw that the more ACEs someone had, the greater their risk for poor outcomes compared with someone with no ACEs. Someone with an ACE score of 4 had twice the risk of heart disease and cancer. Someone with an ACE score of 5 had an 8 times greater chance of being an alcoholic. And those with an ACE score of 6 or more, on average, died 20 years earlier. With every major problem they looked at in the ACE study, the risk went up for each additional adverse experience in childhood. As Dr. Robert Anda says, what's predictable is preventable. It's important to remember that ACEs are not destiny. ACEs are a tool for understanding the health of a population as a whole. For individuals, an ACE score can be a tool for understanding their own risk for health and social problems, and empower them to make changes for themselves and their children. ACEs tend to get passed down from generation to generation and are common across all income levels, races, and cultures. But increasingly, people of all different professions and backgrounds are coming together to discuss how ACEs affect their communities. They're finding new ways to treat and prevent ACEs. Many doctors are starting to screen their patients for ACEs as part of their medical history. More schools are becoming trauma-informed, considering the source of problem behavior when disciplining their students, instead of immediately suspending or expelling them. To learn more about interrupting the cycle of adversity and improving health and well-being for the next generation, please visit kpjrfilms.co.
Thanks for showing that. I'm putting the link in the chat as well, so that if you want to look at it again, so you can take it in, or you want to share it with someone, you're able to. And I just want everybody to do a little self-check and make sure that you're okay, because that was a lot to look at. And then we're gonna move forward to the next slide. Any reactions, questions, thoughts, feelings that you want to throw into the chat or mention out loud as we come back in the room together? Okay. So that study, as they mentioned, was done in the late 1990s. I'm near San Diego right now, so around here. And one of the things that was really surprising to at least the medical profession, and I think some of you probably from just your knowledge of your own community and the work that you do, that you might not be as surprised, but it was pretty shocking that 2/3 of people had experienced at least one ACE. Some of the things in that list are things that people often don't feel comfortable talking about or sharing, even with, or even especially with, a doctor. And so it really changed how the medical profession, but also how all of related professions, educators, and faith leaders who saw that started to think about, gee, how do we get involved with families in a way that can lower the number of experiences that people have that might create some of that impact on health, mental health, and behavior. There has been a lot of follow-up research, and what we have found is there are additional ACEs that were not asked about in the Kaiser study that we now include as we start to sit with families and individuals and think about what might have happened, what might have you been through that that could put you at risk for some of those outcomes. So I want to add in on the right-hand side this list of community level ACEs, because in Kaiser, they were really specifically asking about what happened in your family. And we now know to ask beyond the family, because many of us don't just live in our family, right? We're out there in the community. So some of the things that people report that also have a correlation to some of the same outcomes include just being poor, wondering if you're going to have a place to live, wondering if you will have enough food, and living in a community where there is violence. Maybe in my family, none of those specific things happened, but when I step outside my door, I'm worried about, will I be able to get home safely? Wondering about how is bullying impacting people? Oftentimes when we see things in the news, part of the story is this person was bullied when they were younger. They felt powerless. They were exposed to violence, and no, it wasn't in their family, but it might have been at school or in a social context. Another way that we think about ACEs is discrimination, and just thinking about ways that people may have consistently gotten a message that they're less than, or that they're not emotionally or physically safe out in the world. Foster care, the very experience of being placed in foster care can increase the chance of some of those outcomes. Now, generally speaking, people who are in foster care are also going to have probably experienced some of those family level ACEs. So this adds to the research by saying all that, and when you are removed from the family that you were growing up in and placed with a new family or in a new placement, increases those outcomes. We're also looking more at historical trauma, and this involves a history of oppression and victimization, maybe from people's parents or grandparents, or historically being enslaved or chased out of or oppressed in a country. So we might think about, the situation in Ukraine now, or the situation in other countries where people have had to flee for their lives. Yeah, their family may have remained strong and may not have had some of those family level ACEs, but now that family has had this experience of fearing for their life, having to give up many things just to get to safety. They may have lost people in that process. And the last thing is multi-generational trauma. So it may be that a family member in the past, or a grandparent or parent, experienced some of the ACEs on the left-hand side. A child didn't directly experience them, but they may still have some effect of that depending on the healing and response of their parents and their surrounding family. So let me just check. I don't know why, if I changed my view, I can't see you guys anymore. I feel like I'm alone. Here we go. I got you back. Oh, you're still there. Good. I was looking at the number. I was like, am I talking to myself? So let me just pause here to have you take that in and let me know, or let the whole group know, anything that surprises you on the list, anything where you're like, gee, I'm glad they thought to put that on the list, because yeah, it happens outside the family, but boy, that is life-changing. Anything you're thinking about from the first ACEs and then the added list. We're good? Okay. All right, so let's go back to slide 5. And this is an important point here. ACEs, if you can go to the next one, ACEs may or may not cause trauma, right? There are some places where there's overlap, but there are other ACEs that are not in and of themselves traumatic. And the other thing before I go through this slide that I want to mention is, two people can have the same experience. They can be siblings. They can grow up in the same house. And one person may experience that as traumatic, and the other person may emotionally and physically not show some of that impact, or at least not right off. So this is a good general guideline for you to think about, but we're also always trying to remember that each individual has their own experience, their own internal or external response. And so as a friend, as well as a professional, I'm always sensitive to, boy, I might hear somebody's experience and I make an assumption about how they're receiving that or how they're reacting to it. And I really have to check and find out, what was that like for them, and not make an assumption. So there are three general kinds of ways that we think about trauma. The first one is acute. Acute trauma is like an incident, and people may have had more than one acute trauma. You're not limited to one to be thinking about acute trauma. But this is a moment where you or someone you love has their life or safety threatened, and you're there. Okay, so I may be in a room. I might not be the person whose life is threatened, but it's my parent, it's my sibling, and I see them get threatened with being harmed or hurt in a way that just physically has the same reaction to me, almost as if it was me myself who was being threatened. Acute trauma can also be a car accident, right? So in the medical term, acute trauma is being, you could be in a fire and have to escape for your life. It's not only child abuse and neglect. So somebody who has had that experience might describe that as acute trauma. Chronic trauma, on the other hand, is an ongoing exposure to life and safety threatening situations, events, and this could be threats to somebody that you love as well. But this is why we brought poverty into the community level trauma, right? Because if somebody, their whole day, they're preoccupied with, do we have a place to sleep? Do we have a place to eat? Does somebody care about me? Will somebody protect me while I'm walking to school? That's a level of physical stress that can have the same reaction as some of the ACEs that we've talked about. So if you would do me a big favor, even though you're teeny tiny on my small screen, if you're with me, thumbs up, or not thumbs up to trauma, that's kind of a bummer, but blink or nod so that I know that you're with me. Good, okay. Now, complex trauma is something we would describe as a mix of these things. So when we're working or experiencing a family where there's child abuse or neglect, right? Could be you, could be a friend or a family. Oftentimes the people living in that household or environment are having moments where there's something acute or extreme happening, but they're also having an underlying situation where there's a worry. That chronic trauma. Does somebody care about me? Is somebody else in my family getting hurt? Am I going to have food and housing? And when we have had all those experiences throughout our life, or any of those experiences, if you can move to the next slide, we might have a physical trauma response. Now, a lot of what I'm talking about, and I can put this in the slide when Sonia is speaking, some of the best writing about this, if you're a bookworm and you like to read about the things that you're trying to learn or gain a grasp of, is called The Body Keeps the Score by a man named Bessel van der Kolk. I will put it in the chat later. Don't worry, I won't forget. And he does a lot of research in Boston with people who have come through traumatic experiences, are looking for ways to heal. But one of the things that you may have heard before is this idea of fight, flight, or freeze, which is the body's response to feeling like you're under threat. So in the fight response, and this makes total sense, right? Somebody comes at us and our first gut feeling is, how am I going to protect myself? Well, I'm going to fight. This is often a strategy that particularly kids who grow up with abuse or adults who are living in a violent partnership will try. And if it works, that becomes a go-to mechanism. Does that make sense to you? It becomes, I'm under threat. So the thing that has worked for me before, and my body knows this, I don't even have to think about it, is I'm ready to fight. Another response that may happen is, and I think actually, Alma, when you were talking about this scary situation where somebody pulled up near you and your brothers, this is what worked, was you ran away and you got away, right? So flight is really that feeling of somebody's coming at me, I better escape here. And again, you don't have to think about it. It is a body response. You're immediately, you're almost stopping thinking because your body is intent on, I got to get away from this person. I'm going to run faster than I ever have in my life. I'm going to climb a fence, even though I never thought I could, because I got to get away. There's a third response that I think is less obvious to the outer world, which is freeze. And we actually know this if you think about nature, right? We have bunnies around here right now. And I notice that when I'm walking my dogs, the first thing they do is they stay very still. Now, my dogs have an excellent sense of smell, so staying still is not in the long run a good strategy. But so then they might resort to flight. I haven't seen a bunny try to fight my dogs yet. But the freeze response also makes sense. If I can make myself small enough and invisible, whatever's coming at me might overlook me. I might not be seen. I might not be attacked. So I want you to think about these things as a way that somebody who has experienced trauma may have already been conditioned to react when they feel any sense of threat. And please notice that I'm using the word feel any sense of threat, because when we're talking about trauma and ACEs, we go into autopilot. It's not an intellectual, let me think about a good idea for how I get away, although you might have that thought in the moment. It's really physical, and you can feel the body chemistry in you change. I know, and this is a pretty shallow example, so it won't be difficult to hear, I don't think, except if you've had this experience, it might be, is I know one time I had a tire blowout while I was on a fast moving highway and my kids were in the car. And listen, I didn't even know that I could be like a race car driver on a movie, but I found a way to get from the fast lane over to the edge in like 5 seconds before anybody could hit me. I still don't know how that happened because it was a really busy road, right? It prepared me for driving in LA actually, but I could feel in my body that my chemistry had changed, and it took a while to change back. So some of you are not on screen, but I'm imagining that you're probably nodding like, yeah, I've had that feeling when I'm under attack, that my body takes over. I do what's natural to me. And then I kind of kick into autopilot mode. So let me pause because it sounded like maybe somebody was going to add something, or does anybody have any thoughts, or do you guys just want to be like, yeah, I've had that experience myself, where, you know, later I'm like, how'd I even know to do that? But I did something that saved my own life, or I jumped in, you know, you hear about people's superhuman strength, lifting up a car, you know, because somebody was trapped underneath it. Any input or reactions that you have to this idea of fight, flight, or freeze?
Hi. I think that sometimes it's like you said, it's a reaction that you just react. Once you know something might happen, or you're expecting something to happen, your brain just triggers and goes into a certain mode depending on what you're going through or what you're facing.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing about biology, right? Is I don't have to be awake and thinking to trust that my body is going to have a reaction. And sometimes it's actually going to work. And I know some of you work in schools. You might work with kids where you're like, why is this kid fighting all the time? But we could think about ACEs and trauma as perhaps a contributing reason, right? It could be that whenever they feel under threat, and it could be a situation where nobody else would perceive that as a threat, but for this kid, that's threatening. Their body's like, okay, I got to hop into this. You might also notice, but I think this requires attention to more subtle signs, that some people really appear to shut down or not be present when things become emotionally overwhelming, right? And we, in a clinical sense, we might say dissociate, but actually, I don't think you have to be a clinician to recognize this. As sometimes, you know, I'm in a room with someone, it gets emotional, and all of a sudden they go very quiet and make themselves small. And I might, if I'm paying attention to that, start to wonder as a friend, as a professional, does this mean that I need to step back and lower the emotion in this room because this person seems to be going into a different place? This isn't a safe conversation or interaction for this person. And I think, again, you know, we can think about some of the flight in behaviors that we see in our friends, family, kids and families that we may work with or interact with or go to church with or temple or the mosque with, is we might say, wow, this person kind of checks out whenever things get deep. It might be frustrating to us, right? But we can think about ACEs and think, well, maybe for this person, conflict or high emotion has been very unsafe in the past. And so asking them to stay present and work it through with us is not going to work for them, because their experience has been people can become unpredictable and unsafe when emotions run high, right? And I know I am not the only one in my family. We can be pretty loud. That's a lot for people who have had an experience where loud people have become violent people. So I think these are good things for everybody to talk about, you know, and think about whether or not you hold a professional role working with people who have had ACEs, because chances are you are a person who may have one ACE, and you are probably working with, living with, and friends with people who have also had that experience. Are there other, you know, one comment that I got is, you know, people might get stuck in that mode, right? Because the world is constantly unsafe for them. And that's an excellent point. You know, I'm thinking, hey, we're all getting along, we're having fun. But for a person who has lived with that kind of uncertainty and unsafety, there is no fun in being in a group or out in the world, because I've got to be constantly vigilant, right? So I'd like to go to the next slide, if you don't mind. And I'd like to talk about how does this relate with child abuse prevention and creating safety. So some of the impact of trauma and even some of the ACEs is, we know from that original ACE study and moving forward, this increases the risk for mental health disorders and substance use disorders. When you are living under constant threat and constantly having to go into fight, flight, or freeze, your brain becomes very hypersensitive and all of your energy will become focused on staying safe. It makes you very vulnerable to addiction because of the way that brain chemistry works. There are other people probably in this room who can explain using all the right words. I would have to show you a video because that's not my expertise to know the brain chemistry, but suffice it to say that trauma increases our risk for being constantly on edge and putting all of our energy towards survival, meaning there is room for becoming addicted more easily than other people might. The other thing is, this can play out through multiple generations, even if they weren't there for the event, because we are recreating our world to stay safe if we've had these experiences, and that impacts other people. And the other thing is, let me tell you, my children and pets can tell when I'm on edge, right? So I may have done a lot of healing. I may have had some of these experiences and done a lot of healing, but my body's go-to is still going to be, somebody could jump out at any time and you could be unsafe. So it may affect multiple generations. Not a done deal, but I want to be aware of that. My own trauma may affect my parenting. I think a couple of you have mentioned, and I think we hear this daily when we're watching TV or talking with people that we know. I'm doing things because this is the way my parents did it, right? And if we grew up with behavior patterns and parenting patterns that we repeat, even if we might not see it as abuse, it might be something that's really harmful to our kids. And this is why having community, friends and family support, and sometimes professional help as we become parents is so important, because we want to be sure that if there are things that weren't good for us, we're not then again doing it to our kids. So LaShonda's bringing up generational trauma. And I think this is important, not only because I as a parent have to be aware of this, but also if I want my kids to know their grandparents, I might be organizing our life so that that's a safe interaction if indeed my parents were the ones who weren't safe for me. Now, it might not always come down, but we want to be aware that it can come down through the generations. And as we talked about with the community level, if people are still, you know, aware of, hey, you know, 3 generations ago, my family were enslaved, or they had to flee a violent situation and walk barefoot across, you know, a continent to get to safety where they were welcomed or not welcomed, that may still affect my own brain chemistry and how I'm raising my kids. Again, there are things we can do that are healing factors, but it's real. You know, these things remain present for more generations than we originally thought. And there's some very interesting work being done about that around the generational impact of trauma. I can't think of a really good one book to send you to, But I think the body keeps the score. And when the body says no, probably have some good things in that. So let's go to the next slide. Actually, you can skip that one. I put it in twice. So the impact of trauma on adults and parenting in particular, and I changed the background color because I didn't like it. So that was probably not great because now you can't necessarily read these things. But on the first bullet, let me fix my own so I can see it. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I want to change all these things. So the first bullet says isolation. And it could be that people have had a traumatic childhood. One of the messages they may have received is keep it secret. Don't talk to other people. You can't talk to anybody outside the family, right? This is one way that kids are often coerced to keep the situation within the family so that the person who is committing acts that are dangerous for kids doesn't get in trouble. And that's a message that can stick with us. You know, if we heard that from when we were little, we may adopt the view of, I cannot talk about the family with anybody outside the family, right? The second one is substance use disorder. So again, this is something that people will talk about having a predisposition to. I may come from a family where there's a lot of addiction, and I might myself be vulnerable to it just biologically. But the other thing is it may be a learned behavior. That what I've seen in my home is the best way to shut down those intense feelings that make me fight, flight, or freeze would be to get high, to use alcohol, or to take other medication, prescription medication that helps me not feel that anxiety, fear, and panic so much. And so you can see where that makes a lot of sense, that there would be some carryover from having a difficult childhood into substance use disorder. The third one is intimate partner or domestic violence. You can understand how somebody who grew up in a home where they loved and were afraid of a person might have a hard time saying, you know, as much as I like you or love you, I can't put up with this violence, because their own experience and learned and lived experience tells them that's the way it is, you know. And if you love somebody, the fact that you're not safe shouldn't factor into it. You're going to hang in there. So, the third one is, oh my gosh, I really made a mistake when I changed that, is mental health challenges. So we may struggle with depression. We may struggle with fear or anger in a way that makes it pervasive in our life. We're feeling it every day, and that can affect the way we manage our mental health. The last one is lack of support or resources. This can also be related to that idea of keep it secret, keep it within your family. And an idea that many of us have, regardless of whether or not we had these experiences of, I shouldn't ask for help, I'm a grown-up, I should be able to handle this on my own. But I want you to take a look at the whole slide, even though I know that you probably can't read all the teeny tiny writing in light colors. And think about how these things can all be happening at once in any one of our lives or families, right? So when we talk about child abuse prevention, one of the things that brought Sonia and I together, and one of the ways we became colleagues and friends, was that we immediately clicked because we understood that it can't just be professionals and therapists who address the needs of families who have had trauma and ACEs. There has to be a community around. This is a lot to overcome. If you grew up where some of the things in here were your everyday and you want to make a change, you're going to need people to call in the middle of the night, right? You're going to need people to say to you, I know you don't feel like going out, but let's just take a walk. And that can't all be professionals, right? So the impact on adults who are parenting and the subsequent impact on their kids is what we're really trying to think about. I'm going to throw out a couple of cautions here, though. And please, again, throw things in the chat or raise your hand if you have thoughts or feelings about this, and then we're going to move on. If you can go to slide 10 next, please. One of the things that can happen when you become aware of all the trauma and ACEs that exist around you, or when you start to even say, wow, I always knew that happened, but I didn't think of it as ACEs or trauma, is you can want to help. Of course, that's why you're on this call, right? We want to help. But there is a danger in helping that sometimes we can fall into a pattern where despite our good intentions, right, we wind up repeating some of the patterns with the person that we're trying to help. And we can actually be affected by the helping effort. So let me ask you guys, you can throw this in the chat. If you were looking at these three options, you could be a rescuer, you could be a perpetrator, or you could be a victim. Which role would you most like to play? Take your time
Rescuer.
about it. Rescuer. Anybody else? Definitely rescuer on my part. In the chat, anywhere, anywhere. Yeah, we want to be the rescuer, right? You may have had this experience in your friendship groups or in your professional life. We come in wanting to be the rescuer. So we step in, we try to set things right. We try to help a family. But because those patterns are really strong, there are times where instead of appreciating and thinking, wow, this person's trying to help me, that individual that you want to help winds up thinking, wow, you're coming at me, you're attacking me, you're not helping me, you're disrupting our family pattern. And as much as I want to be safe, that's really uncomfortable. Or that's painful. And so you might start to hear them talking about you like you're actually a perpetrator. It's like, hey, I'm just here to help. I'm not trying to pick on you. Yeah, but you called in a report on me. Yeah, but you told my parents they should stop doing what they're doing and now they're mad at me. And so we're always trying to be sensitive as a community of people who want to help to the fact that the road to healing is rough. And sometimes people both want to have things get better and they are afraid to make change. And so I say this to say, and I know there are people that play a lot of different roles. If at first, when you try to help somebody, they don't take it the way you thought they would, it's okay. That's normal because change is hard, even if it's a change to something better and safer. And so, you know, hang in there. Child abuse prevention and the help with healing can be really, it can be tough at certain moments, but it's really an important effort for all of us to make, right? Because when people start to treat me like I'm a perpetrator, guess what I feel like? I feel like I'm a victim. Wait, why are you picking on me? I came in here to help and now I'm kind of getting all this negative energy. Guys, it's part of the process. Change is still hard, even if it's a change to something better. But truly, healing can only happen through connection. People can do a lot of work on their own, but we need to have connection and a new kind of relationship to recover from some of those ACEs and trauma. And so while it is going to be hard work, it is important work. Let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to mention the next couple of slides pretty quickly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sonia to help us think about some of these ideas. So our own experiences might impact how we interact with families where we know something's going on. Hey, they're on the path to these ACEs outcomes. They're experiencing some trauma. First of all, if I grew up in a family that was positive, reliable, and loving, and those things didn't happen in my family, as much as I want to help, I've got to be aware that I'm affected by my own childhood. So I might not really understand the family dynamics. I might not understand how can this person still love a parent or partner who has done these things to them, for example. And if I come out with that, if I say to somebody, well, you know, how could you even still care about this person? Immediately, what's going to happen for the person with trauma? Fight, flight, or freeze, right? Because I just came at them. I did it trying to be supportive. I meant well, but because I don't understand their experience and I came in with my own, I might have limited how much they're going to accept my help. I might also think it's really simple to parent and it's easy to change. Let me give you a book and tell you, stop spanking your kids, stop, you know, doing X, Y, and Z. But there are a lot, we all have examples in our own life of things we know that we should do, but they're hard to do, right? I know this chocolate romance that I have with chocolate is probably not in the long run very good for me, but I am still hanging in there with it. I might judge the family against my own family standards, right? I might say, well, if you don't have housing, if you don't have enough food, that's your own fault. You just need to get a job. It's easy. That's what happened in my family. And so again, if I make statements or even carry that attitude with me, we're talking about families who are very sensitive to being under attack. That's what saved their life before. They're going to know you're thinking that, right? And I might struggle with hearing or seeing things that I have not previously seen or heard. I say to somebody, you can trust me, you can talk to me. They start sharing their experience with me, and honestly, it might blow my mind. I'm like, I didn't even know people would do that to children. I didn't know people would do that to somebody that they say that they love. And so I'm going to have my own reaction, right? We just want to be aware of this. And we'll talk a little bit at the end about needing to seek help. Let's go to the next slide. On the reverse, our own experience might be that I grew up in my own family that was adverse or dangerous to me as a child. So somebody's confiding in me and I'm thinking, geez, you know, we had the same experience. So I might make assumptions that their reaction was the same, that the relationship was the same, that the impact was the same, or actually that healing that they can do should be just like the healing that I may have done myself. Does that make sense to you? Just nod or blink, wave a hand. I might also over-identify with some people in the family, meaning that I can't be a partner in healing to other people in the family. And you know, in some ways, that's a good thing to know. I'm not the one to help you because honestly, I had my own experience. I'm not at a place where I could help a person on the other side of that experience. And I might also have a strong reaction if somebody tells a story that's too much like my own, because I'm trying to hang in with them. I'm trying to hear their story, but I'm also thinking, gosh, that's just like that Tuesday in May when something happened to me. Again, it doesn't mean that you should stop trying to help, but it does mean that we have an obligation to be, in my view, aware of this and know it and get our own help and support so that we can manage this. So I think, Sonia, you're going to pick up with the next slide. I know you said 14, but I'm kind of remembering yesterday. Are you comfortable to go ahead or you want me to?
I'm good.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. So as we think about the way our lens has changed, I know again from being within child welfare 28 years, that we really looked at moving from what is wrong with you. A lot of the discussion and dialogue was around what did you do wrong? It was really where the individuals was looked at being the problem, being the cause of everything that has occurred. And moving from there to the what has happened to you. So really being open to hearing, learning from, being curious around that family story, being there in it with that person of listening around. I want to know more about where have you been? You know, again, what are some of the things that has been done to you? What are some of the things you have experienced? I think a piece that's also important with that is moving from not just the words that we use. Sometimes we begin to know words, we begin to maybe even know questions that we can ask, but even some of those nonverbal cues, right? So that we're attentive to that, what that might look like. So our facial responses, the way our body responses, our physical responses, when Tricia stated, we may begin to ask those questions to be curious, but then as individuals begin to share, you know, our faces, it may be in response to what we are hearing that was done, but our face may be telling this person where they may react in such a way that, oh my goodness, I'm repulsive to this individual that I'm trying to share with. Right. And so, or we may begin to even shield ourselves, or where we start where, you know, looking at the watch. What are some of those things? Now we're in this virtual world, right? So iPads are in front of us, our phones are always going off. So we want to really be attentive to knowing that we are in this with you, and we really want to hear what it is that you have experienced. We want to ensure that that dialogue remains open. And so as we look at that next slide, and so you're not going to, without sharing a name, you know, putting that in chat, but just thinking of someone you know who has overcome ACEs, trauma and experience. And so I know someone earlier shared with us the walk home from school, and then something else that occurred in their life. But just thinking about that, just throw in the chat. And I know, so the next slides, Tricia is going to walk us through what are some of those resilience, but what are some of those things, not with, again, without a name. So within the chat, or if you want to verbally share, what are some things that helped to overcome that event that occurred, that ACEs, that trauma that you went through? So what is something that helped you? Thank you. Someone put therapy. Thank you for that, LaShonda. So you are someone you know that helped you to overcome. The understanding of the family. Thank you. Right in my journal. Also praying. And again, as we share these things, right, that sometimes we're even writing them down because we want to know for ourselves and for others. Self-help books. Somebody else, again, put therapy, that art and being creative. These are the things that even as we know, music, and that we know that we can help others. Again, these can be suggestions, not telling them you must, right? But these are ideas that we can bring to, I know some folks don't like the whole idea of think outside the box, but it does help us. What are some other things beside the professional connection with someone outside the situation, for that person, a neighbor, exercise, listening. And that can be with the listening for, that was where you had, that person had other people that would listen with them, listen to them as they shared.
Yeah, just being there to listen, like empathetically, and just letting them talk.
Awesome. Thank you for that one. I saw a lot in there that's talked about the community, right? So our school community, prayer, family, so church, so whatever those different places might be, the same way these things may have helped you, someone you know, to process, we want to be able to hold on to those things so that we can help others in their work, right? As again, some options. So as we move into these other slides, what you're going to see is these things fit within these different areas. As Tricia will walk us through some of the ideas of building resilience.
Okay, so some of the things that we saw in the video, but I just want to pull them forward, are resilience that we bring, like when parents begin to heal and they have their own resilience. So they come up with some of the ideas that you came up with, but this is something that makes a huge difference for kids. Even if early in their parenting, parents were not really aware of the impact or addressing the behaviors or issues. Actually, when kids see their parents say, you know what, look, I didn't do it the way that I wanted to, and I really want to do something different going forward, and I'm going to work hard and I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm doing this because I love you. If you can go back one, then, you know, that has a huge impact on kids, and they take a lesson for that, because we know they take a lesson from everything they see us do, right? Social connections are critical. Isolation is the enemy of healing. Even though when any of us are depressed or overwhelmed, we feel like, let me pull the blankets over my head, right? I feel that way every morning, kind of, because I work on a different time zone than I live in oftentimes. But though that, make yourself get up, make yourself take a walk, make yourself have a connection. You guys might be that friend to someone, even if you're not doing therapy, or you do it, but not with them, where you're just like, hey, can we go get a coffee every Thursday morning? Like, I'd like to have that to look forward to every week. I have a friend who told me offhand a couple months ago, she's like, well, Sundays are just really hard for me. She's going through something. And so I call her every Sunday, right? It's not a big deal to me, but I know that that's a day where it might be harder for her to reach out. So as a partner in change and healing for her, I make that effort. Concrete support in times of need. Look, that's not a time of judgment. We already know that one of the impacts of ACEs and trauma is a difficulty in asking for help. You notice that somebody always has to say no when you guys say go to coffee. Okay, well, look, I'm picking up coffee today because I want to make sure that that doesn't keep you from coming with me. Or, you know, I know times are tough and I picked up some extra groceries. You know, it sounds like you're struggling with a place to live. Why don't you and I go look together for that? So these are ways that we give concrete support. And I think there have been times where people can turn judgmental because they don't know that history of ACEs and trauma. And they're like, well, are you really trying? You know, you should be able to do these things for yourself, pull yourself up by your bootstrap. But when people are stuck in a moment where they're really feeling the pain that they experienced before, it's very difficult to get things done. So any practical help that you can give people who you know may struggle, and it might be at the root of it is this, you're doing something tremendous in offering help. You know, share your own knowledge of parenting and child development. I'll sometimes, you know, if I'm, and we all have this experience, you're in the store, you see somebody dealing with a child who's having a meltdown or whatnot, you know, being able to say, yeah, you know, oh gosh, you know, when toddlers feel that way, there's nothing you can do except just let, you know, wait it out. There are ways that we can casually be supportive to parents near us, even if they have never confided in us how overwhelming it is, because we know it is, right? Sharing things that might be helpful tips for them of like, you know, ways that you yourself know. When I become overwhelmed with parenting, I just remember that if the child is safe, I can leave the room for a minute, right? I can make sure that they're not in a dangerous environment and I can take a breath for myself. Those are things that can help new parents or parents who don't really feel like they know how to parent get through those times. And the other thing is kids are born with and can develop social and emotional confidence. So we have a lot of things available, and many of you are probably in parenting education. So you have these tools right at your fingertips, but even if you don't, the internet and schools and daycares are great at this. We have ways that we can teach kids to name their emotions, which is one of the ways that they begin to help to get control over their emotions. And helping them develop understanding about what it means to interact with people, you know, the importance of not hitting people, the importance of caring about others. Those are some things that help people become more resilient. Can you jump to the next slide? And the other thing is we can use a lot of different paths to healing, which you guys listed. So I'm not going to regurgitate the whole list, but one of the things I want to mention, especially if you read that book, oh shoot, which I was supposed to put in the chat, but I'll put it in now, is healing and connecting the mind and body. So there's a reason why people say exercise. I'm not the biggest exerciser in the world, but one of the greatest paths to healing from trauma is to use yoga, exercise, walking, and running, because anything that connects your mind to your body helps people stay present and stay regulated. It's really hard to react with fight, flight, and freeze if you're also trying to keep yourself engaged in the physical world. And that can be appreciating nature. You know, that doesn't have to be doing something in a group. So you see some other things in here about having community and connection. If you are a friend of somebody who struggles, remind them how great they are at some things. They have other strengths that maybe they're not focused on right now. They might forget that they've already overcome a lot. They've already accomplished a lot. So reminding them of that and encouraging people to get some, you know, get some help if they're really struggling. If we can go to the next slide, this is a slide based on the work of this man who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, and When the Body Says No, I think is by him also. So there are 4 fundamental truths. I'm going to ask you to click once. The first click, and I think you should be able to click anywhere on the screen and it might show up. Let's see. Okay. Is connection in itself is healing. If we have relationships where we're not exploited and we're not hurt, over time, our trust even in one person can help us heal and be ready for other relationships. You want to click another one? Empathy matters. Helping people feel like they are not alone, and you can, even without having experienced what they experienced, understand that it might have, that it was difficult and that is impactful on them. Those are huge things. I love when Sonia covered the issue of what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you. That's a slight twist in language, but it can help people really feel accepted for the greatness of who they are as a person, even though they've had difficult experiences and might have done awful things. You know, some of the people that we want to partner with have done things that they have guilt and shame about, but letting them know that you see them as a whole person can help them open up and open the path to healing. One more. Emotional regulation is possible. Over time, and it may involve working with professionals, you can learn not to jump into fight, flight, and freeze so quickly. You can learn strategies that help you not react with the same behavior that you've had in the past that might not have worked for you. And this is an important message when we're partnering with families who are trying to recover from abuse and neglect, is letting parents know change is possible. Emotional regulation is possible, and you can get there. And I think that actually links to our fourth click, which is we can be safe together. We can change the social conditions and environment so that people can feel safe and they can thrive. I do have some more slides. I don't know that we have a whole lot of time for that. And I do just want to show, I kind of want to,
Did we want the second video, Tricia, or because
I
believe
don't know that, do you think, Tracy, I think we have time because I think it's pretty short.
Okay,
So that's
yeah.
on slide 18. This video is Josh Shipp. He is a public speaker. This is not a recent video. You can find more recent things from him. Trigger warning here. He is going to talk about the fact he was in foster care and some of the things that happened to him. He doesn't go in a lot of detail, but he's going to mention it.
I mastered the art of getting kicked out of foster homes. And the fact of the matter is I trusted no one. And looking back, I guess, how could I? From the time my parents left me, to the time another foster kid raped me, to the time I was bullied so bad, I tried to kill myself with a bottle of pills. So I'm sitting in the van, in the driveway of this next home, preparing to meet Rodney and Christine from Yukon, Oklahoma. He looks in my eyes and says, "Son, you can keep causing problems, you can keep trying to mess up, you can keep pushing us away, you can keep trying to get us to kick you out of here, but you've got to get it through your thick head, son. We don't see you as a problem. We see you as an opportunity." You see, every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story. March 2015, Harvard's National Scientific Council on the Developing Child released this study saying, and I quote, "Every child who winds up doing well has had at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult." My friend and mentor, Reggie Joyner from Atlanta, taught me to think about it this way. In this jar are 936 marbles. Each one of these marbles represents a single week from the birth of a kid until that kid turns 18 years old. You know, a 16-year-old, you got 104 marbles remaining. Right here, we are looking at time. In fact, you're looking at all the time or all of the weeks you have left to influence this kid, or this kid before they turn 18 and begin making critical life decisions without your presence. What matters isn't how much time you have left with a particular kid that you care about. What matters is what you do with that time left. I mean, consider how many weeks Rodney had left when he bailed me out of jail. 26. I was 6 months away from graduating high school. 26 weeks to get through my thick head, my bitterness, my anger, my distrust of adults, to get me to finally accept help. You see, it's not about how much time you have left with that kid you're thinking of. What matters is what we do with that time. If every kid truly is one caring adult, one Rodney away from being a success story, then the challenge is this. The difference between a statistic And a success story is you.
Okay, I think that's actually a good note to end our part of this time we've had together. We have a couple minutes if you want to hang around or have questions or things you want to share with us. I put in the chat a reference, the National Traumatic Stress Network, which has good information on childhood trauma, and our contact information is at
Tricia, you did have a couple more slides on the presentation. Did you want to
I think
use?
we'll,
No?
if there aren't any questions, I'll cover it because it's about the impact on us of hearing traumatic stories.
Okay. And I
Um,
believe Carmen, our translator, has raised her hand. She's
Okay, great.
asking
And
us-
Dan, yes, let me edit the coloring on them and then I'll give them to Tracy to distribute. Carmen, what do you want to talk about? Go ahead.
One of our members that's in the Spanish room would like to know the name of the book you were mentioning earlier.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's The Body Keeps the Score, Carmen.
Yeah, I think he has two books, The Body Keeps the Score and When the Body Says No. And he's a fascinating guy because he actually is somewhat unpopular among researchers because he's really smart. Nobody argues with his research, but he'll be like, you should go to yoga. Like, don't, you know, he takes some non-traditional healing approaches in his clinic. But he has the numbers to back it up. So he's always my go-to and very charismatic if you want to look at him on YouTube.
And if you didn't, and I was going to say, if you didn't want to raise your hand, which we did have Maria raising her hand, you can also put it in the chat and we'll make sure we read them out to the group. Maria, what is your comment?
Hi. I think for myself, I mean, non-traditional methods work.
Yeah.
You know, depending on who you are and what you believe in, a lot of people don't see it that way. A lot of people, oh no, you have to go to NA or you have to go to this. No, you don't have to go to that. It depends what works for you. You know, yoga might work for somebody, but it might not work for me. Maybe prayer works for me. You know, it just depends, I think, on the person, and you have to find what works for each individual. That's the important thing.
Very true.
I love what you're saying because at the heart of the trauma of abuse and neglect is the feeling in the person of I have to do what somebody else is telling me or else I will be in danger or killed, right? So the issue of having self-control and being able to say what works for you is in itself a healing process. And I think although we may know there are some types of therapy that work better than others, in the end, what I've seen in my many, many years of the work, and I think Sonia's had the same experience, is that when people choose what they want to do to heal, they will make it work. And it might be something that other people would be like, how is fishing going to help you? But if that person's like, nope, that's what's going to help me, they will find a way to bring in the other elements that they need to make it work. So an important point that you make. Thank you, Maria. What do you think?
We have Dan raising his hand, and then Maria, you're next after Dan.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. First and foremost, thank you very much for your presentation. It's so helpful and I can resonate with it, especially with the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I'm a foster adopt parent. My son is now 14 years old and I've had him since he was 5 months old. But even at a very young age, he had suffered through very traumatic experience with his biological parents, where even now at 14 years old, he'll still wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares. And your presentation on how to go about with families and the healing process, like honestly, I'm going to take so much of it with me in learning how to apply that with my son. As an MSW student now, I do take a lot of like my learning experiences through school, and even now with your presentation, which has been amazing, I'm taking even a lot more with me.
Oh, good.
And I hope that you do make your slideshow available to us. Like honestly, this is it's not only a learning experience, but it would help me. It's going to help me teach my husband and my son how to process the trauma that he's experienced.
Wonderful.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Yeah, we're not big on copyright. We feel like anybody who knows anything that helps should be out there. So, you know, we'll definitely share it and
I'll make sure to
use it as you wish. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. We have Maria, and then after Maria, Annie. Maria?
Sorry. Also, I think it's really important to acknowledge that depending on where the people are getting the help from, or, you know, a lot of time it's nonprofit agencies, you know, and depending on who maybe the therapist maybe that's working with them, a lot of times people let their own feelings and their own beliefs get in the way of somebody else's treatment. It's not their treatment, you know, because I've seen it happen. I worked a lot in nonprofits before working with DMH, and I would see people say, oh, well, that person doesn't, you know, she abused her child. She doesn't, you know, deserve the kids back. Just their own thoughts would come into the helping part, you know, and it wasn't fair to the parents. It wasn't fair to whoever was going through something. It wasn't fair. So I think that a lot of people have to keep that in mind. If you're a professional, you have to leave your beliefs and your things at the door when you walk into somebody's home, and where somebody comes into your office seeking for help. And they always have to remember, you have to figure out what works for them, not what would work for you, because you're not the one that's going through the situations.
So true, Maria. And I'm a person who, if you want to win a lot of money, I don't gamble, but you could play poker with me, because in my real life, I'm like, everything shows on my face. And so I actually can't even like fake it. I've got to really genuinely come in with a place of non-judgment and believing that it's somebody has to create their own solution. And that is, you know, that's a lot of self-work to get to that place where we can really accept that people may choose a path that is not what we thought they should do, and have faith in the person that they know what will work for them. So I love that you raised that. Thank you so much.
And we have Annie asking a question or a comment.
Yes, hi, thank you so much. You know, this was such a needed presentation that I had to attend. I'm so grateful for letting me join in. Sorry, I was a bit late because I had another appointment and I thought I would make it, but thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. My question is, I would like to attend more of such workshops and you know, to have more knowledge and, you know, to equip myself. I'm a mother of a 8-year-old child, and you know, I was raised in a very different culture, and I lived a very protective life. Things are very different here. It's like you have to be there for your child everywhere, you know, whether it's the nanny, whether it's the school, or whether it's a park, or whether it's the bathroom or restroom or whatever, you know, you have to make yourself available for your child all the time. Knowing the cultures here, I see that children who are abused, or women and girls who are being raped, I'm not being gender discriminative, but usually women and girls face this situation a lot. And my question is, why are our institutes so weak when it comes to judicial system, that they would treat that person who would report a child abuse, or, you know, would be treated in a way that they would be shamed and they would be insulted and humiliated, you know, and they would be told off that, you know, don't bring this issue, or if you open up your mouth, it would backfire on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you raise a difficult question. There is a way long conversation to be had there, I think, individually and across society. But I will leave it with this thought, Annie, and perhaps it's what you've thought of as well, which is this is uncomfortable stuff. And this is emotional stuff. And when anybody tells somebody else a story that makes them uncomfortable, their reaction may be to shut it down because it's just so painful to be in the conversation, or because
Yes,
it is hard to
exactly.
believe because we don't want it to be true. And so I think that's where all of us, and I applaud you all for coming here to this conversation, is, you know, we have connections in our own communities. We can quietly but consistently say it's important for people to be able to speak and to be heard. And even when we can't take action about it in the way we wish we could, it's important for them to know that they are valued, and that, you know, the things that happen to people that are dangerous should not happen. So I think it's a longer conversation, but thank you for bringing that up. Tracy?
Yes, thank you so much. And so I just, you actually, Annie, you mentioned, you know, delving deeper. I'm actually going to speak about that in just a moment, but wanted to thank you all for your time today. It's a Wednesday, it's the morning, but you chose to be with us. So we really appreciate your time and having this conversation. Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Sonia, for being our guest speakers today. And finally, I did put in the chat the Eventbrite link. We have 2 more in vein of April being Child Abuse Prevention Month. We have Shenandoah to follow. She'll be speaking next week, April 20th, a survivor's guide to the long-term impacts of trauma in our community. She actually was in the system, in the foster care system. So that's really going to be, you know, really a deep, in-depth conversation. And Corey Bess, the community curator and founder of Mining for Gold, will be talking about the system or me, what must happen first. So again, if those are of an interest to you, I did put in the chat the Eventbrite. Also, please make sure that you signed in so that we have a record of you, because we will be sending out those the presentation to you later on this afternoon. So again, thank you so much. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.